What's happening, folks? Back for a Propagandhi concert DVD watch-along. I did one of these recently for a Subhumans concert DVD that I've had for a couple decades, and it felt right to come back for this Propagandhi DVD, which is called Live from Occupied Territory. You can see on the menu as well as in the DVD case here. So this was recorded at a venue called the Zoo in their hometown of Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. And yes, the most recent album at the time this came out was Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes, which I believe is '01. So I think more songs are from that album in this concert performance than any other, though there are songs from both of their first two albums before this, as well as at least one called True, a song, that comes from some of their non-album material. It was actually included on their Where Quantity is Job Number One, which is like their unreleased with a little bit of live material compilation that they had released by this point. So I'm not sure, there's one or two other tracks actually that I don't recognize, including the final one shown on the track list, which is called Hard Times, and in the moment I can't remember where that's from. Nevertheless, there are some great songs in here, including a couple of my favorites, certainly from the first few albums and even still to this day. I wanted to give a shout out not only to Ryan, who has been always interested in talking about Propagandhi and Bad Religion and other punk bands that I've been going through, and who runs, or is one of the people who runs, the Obsolete Punks YouTube channel. So if you haven't checked them out, definitely go over there and see some of their reactions and give them a subscribe. But yes, also to Michaela, who has sent a number of donations and also music of different kinds, physical media, digital zip files, and so on. But she has shared a number of donations with me, including one that she sent right around the time I was trying to order a pre-order of the upcoming Propagandhi album, which will be out next month. This is in April of 2025 as I shoot this, and the album is going to be released in May of 2025. So big shout out to Michaela for helping in that regard. And yes, again, I have had this DVD for over 20 years, but I don't remember the last time I watched it. It's certainly been a while, so most of this should be pretty fresh. And as I said, there's at least one or two songs along the way where I'm not remembering exactly where they come from, but a number of others are much more familiar and among my favorites, so I'm looking forward to it. Let's get to it. This is a concert DVD by Propagandhi from 2003 called Live from Occupied Territory, and I love how they subtitle it an official bootleg, which seems to be a contradiction in terms.
If you think I actually have a routine and that I paid any fucking attention to trying to get a routine for you fuckers, I didn't. Anyways.
You know, I mentioned Where Quantity is Job Number One. That also has some live material, I think, from a Winnipeg show, although maybe not at the same venue. But they were quite funny in the in-between song moments. Like, there's a part where you can hear Chris, the lead singer, saying, like, I think I'm going to lose all the clothes, which would suggest that he was disrobing to some degree. And then later you can hear someone from the audience, like, shout out when they're taking a particularly long time between songs, play some fucking songs. And one of them, I don't know if it's Jord, the drummer, or maybe also Chris, but one of them replies like, hey, we're just carrying on in the Propagandhi tradition of being poorly unorganized. And then one of the other members is like, wait, poorly unorganized? Isn't that a double negative? Which begs the question, right? Like, if you're poorly organized, okay, that makes sense. If you're unorganized, again, that makes sense. But poorly unorganized? Like, maybe that is a bit of a double negative. Either way, that always made me laugh. But the funny thing is, I've seen them twice since, or twice in my history of seeing them. One was right around this time, I think maybe even a year before this. It was when they were on tour for Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes, and it was at the Glass House in Pomona, and it was an amazing show. Absolutely loved it. But they were very, like, let's say, I don't know if business-like is the right term, but they were far less, like, cheeky and time-wasting and just saying silly stuff as I had heard on the Where Quantity is Job Number One live material. They really, they talked a little bit about some of the songs in advance, but they were very like, boom, song, a couple quick comments, boom, song. And they just really went through their playlist in a more, let's say, efficient manner. And then I saw them again, and I want to say 2017, maybe it was early 2018, but it was when they were on tour for the oh, what's the name of the album? I was going to say Failed States, but it's not Failed States. It's Victory Lap. It was when they were on their Victory Lap tour. And shout out to my friend Tim, who's a huge punk fan and, someone who I was good friends with in college. He's since like moved away and we don't talk as much anymore, and maybe not likely that he'll see this, but it was a really cool show. We both had a great time. So that comes back to me in the moment. But at that show, they talked a bit more than the '01 or '02 show, but still less so than in the recorded live material that I've heard in audio form. I will say, though, that by that time, by the Victory Lap tour that I saw them on, Sue Lin, the guitarist and female vocalist who shows up in some of their songs now vocally that initially didn't have secondary vocals, I think. Either way, she had only recently joined the band, and so I remember they talked about her a bit, and she was definitely awesome. So yeah, looking forward to the new album, looking forward to this concert DVD. Let's watch it, and we'll finish this little menu bit, of course.
I'll wait till there's a fucking drum roll, assholes. There's my drum roll. All right.
Make me laugh.
I'm not gonna make you fucking laugh, okay? You can laugh on your own fucking time.
All right, let's do it.
So it's been a pretty chaotic last 24 hours. I don't know what the fuck is up with this band.
I was going to say, I'm not sure who this is, but it's not a member of the band, and I wonder if this is sincere or a bit of tongue-in-cheek, meaning it sounds like he's going to complain about Propagandhi, but maybe, he's like one of their friends or tour managers or whatever. I guess we'll see.
Totally dropped the ball on getting their paperwork together for getting into the States for this tour. I don't know what it is. I don't know how many conversations.
I mean, I'm not even joking now. Like, we're living in some very dark times here in the United States in 2025, where literally not only are students like who happen to be here on foreign visas and so on literally getting kicked out of the country for expressing dissident views or views that the current regime is not fond of, but there have been musicians who are either being denied entry or who are questioning whether they should actually come tour because they don't want to be harassed and or forced to leave the country after committing to concerts and so on. So it's interesting to hear this comment more than 20 years earlier, which would only be more pronounced now. And of course, this is making me think of their song Speculative Fiction, which comes from their Potemkin City Limits album, which I just did a second reaction to. I had reacted to it a couple years ago, but again, in light of what's been happening in the last few months and the Canada-US relations being at an all-time nadir because of the insane rhetoric coming out of Washington these days, it seems especially relevant and poignant, unfortunately.
Conversations I had with not only members of the band, but people who were supposed to be helping them out, setting up this tour, about getting this paperwork together and giving themselves enough time. And then here we are, leaving in 2 weeks, and some of them don't even have their fucking passports yet. It's fucking ridiculous. It's like they're a group of amateurs trying to play in the big leagues, and they can't pull it off. So, as usual, they have everybody else running around for them, trying to get it done in time. Everybody else has to fucking lose their shit, trying to fix their fuck up. And, what can I say? It's par for the course for these guys. Same story with the recording of their record. Same story every day. Same story every day here at G7. It's like some sort of fucking virus these guys have.
Okay, this must be tongue-in-cheek, because if he works for G7, surely he's sympathetic to Propagandhi beyond the vitriol that he's suggesting here. But G7 Welcoming Committee is the name of the independent record label set up by Propagandhi, which not only has released some of their material, but some other bands in their orbit and, that they found and or sponsored. Nevertheless, it makes reference to the G7, which I think is now is it the G20, something like that? But it's a number of wealthier nations that try to coordinate policy. Now, again, all of this seems like it doesn't even make sense anymore in light of some of the protectionist and nationalist attitudes emanating out of certain capitals and the sort of a return of an imperialism. But again, it was an organization set up to encourage free trade between powerful nations and also the sort of, transcontinental economic exploitation of lesser nations or the extraction of resources from them and so on. Now, in principle, the G7 as they were back then would have said, well, we're trying to bring everyone, out of poverty and so on. But like the World Bank and the IMF, those institutions tend to benefit, surprise, surprise, the countries which are already the wealthiest and which are trying to take advantage of other markets and, become the dominant force there as well, and pay little attention to the, let's say, local economies and environmental concerns in places outside of the dominant nation. So the G7 Welcoming Committee was sort of an ironic name for the label, because Propagandhi, like other bands, criticizes the hypocrisy and or weasel-worded way in which those institutions talk about benefiting everyone, but of course benefit themselves more than any others. So that's what G7 is, or that's what the G7 he's referring to is, the G7 Welcoming Committee independent record label.
And if this is indicative of what's coming up on this tour, I don't know how much of this responsibility is going to end up on my shoulders as just another person who has to clean up their fucking bullshit.
Sweet beer. If you think I actually have a routine and that I paid any fucking attention to trying to get a routine for you fuckers, I didn't. Anyways.
I'm trying to figure out if that's Todd. Now, at this point, Todd, also called Todd the Rod, he was the newest member to Propagandhi, and he had replaced John K. Sampson, who was clearly looking to be more of an artsy kind of punk artist, and his band The Weaker Thans, which is a very cool band, and although I haven't heard that much of their material, the handful of songs written by John that made it onto the first couple Propagandhi albums, most notably Anchorless, I think is the best example of what Propagandhi might have been if John had been in more central to what the band was doing. His material is great, but definitely it was a different vibe than Chris's songs or, those that I think Jord was involved in writing too. So eventually, John, who played bass, he left the group and they replaced him with Todd, whose surname I'm forgetting. And Todd came from a band called I Spy and maybe some others, but I think I Spy was the one that had been most prominent. And he definitely brought more of a hardcore type of sound, definitely hardcore punk, but maybe a bit more of a metal approach to his songwriting and or vocal and bass work. So I think this was the beginning. Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes, it was another shift in their sound, and ultimately they've since come to have an even more mature and metal infused sound. But yes, this album, Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes, was notably different from either of the first two, and already the second album was quite different from their opening album, How to Clean Everything. So yeah, Todd at this point is new. Now, I actually don't know if that's Todd talking. I haven't seen a clear enough shot yet, but...
I'll wait till there's a fucking drum roll, assholes. There's my drum.
That's right, Kowalski. And I didn't remember that Jord was, what was it, Jordan? They always call him Jord, so yeah, Samoleski, he's the drummer.
Drum roll. All right.
Make me laugh.
I'm not gonna make you fucking laugh, okay? You can laugh on your own fucking time. So what the fuck? There's a big deal about T3 these days. Everyone's talking about it.
Maybe this is Ethan Harris, Canada's funny man? I'd argue that Canada's funny man is clearly Colin Mockery, but go on.
It's on everyone's minds. T3, huh?
Okay, yeah, definitely not Todd. I couldn't see in the light, but yeah, this must be Ethan Harris.
Yeah, you fucking... Yeah, T3. You seen T3? Hey, yeah, I was fucking snorting T3 backstage just before I came out here. It fucking sucks shit. Hey. No, yeah. Oh, but wait, no. There's more. No, there isn't, but... Yeah, no, there's Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's starring in this new movie. It's all about fucking liquid metal endoskeleton over top of human flesh. No, wait, other way around. Endoskeleton over...
I'd argue that's more the plot of the second Terminator movie, arguably the best of the franchise. T3, I didn't hate it, but, you know, it wasn't on the level of either of the first two. But it's interesting, like, again, this is more than 20 years ago, so to hear them talking about that as, like, the new movie that had come out, and, you know, Arnie still part of the franchise, it's a bit of a throwback.
Over top of human flesh. No, wait. Human flesh over top of endoskeleton. Learning computers, right? Learning computers. I never thought of Arnold Schwarzenegger as a learning computer. I thought of him as a bad word processor. If you think there's more jokes, there isn't. Hey, but wait, I'll be here all weekend. I live upstairs. I chop people's heads off and disembowel them. Oh no, wait, I live at the Albert. And I actually, yeah, the Royal Albert Arms and heads and disemboweled bodies. Because it wasn't me. No, fuck the Albert, yeah, sure. But it wasn't me, it was Susan Sarandon. We all know that her jewelry was stolen. And she's like, fucking heads are gonna fucking roll. And they did, okay,
Todd is a madman. In fact, like that Scott Hooper, in the moment, I'm not remembering that name, so I'm not sure the role. But yeah, Todd is a madman on stage. I will say, just as a bit of context for this song, which is with friends like these, who the fuck needs COINTELPRO? COINTELPRO, sometimes called COINTELPRO, is a program of the US government in which they were essentially trying to work with unsavory characters in other countries to either stop the spread of communism, quote unquote, or to repress, like, you know, leftist militias and so on. So it was a way that they were like inserting themselves, the US government and intelligence agencies, into the politics of other countries and regional conflicts and so on. And it was often working with some pretty unsavory people. And in fact, now that I say that, I think like actually a bigger part of it was infiltrating those organizations, like leftist groups, and even within the United States, where they were trying to sort of break up resistance and dissident groups from within with agent provocateurs who would, you know, get inside the organization and then try to cause problems or, you know, get everybody arrested.
Friends like these, the fucking COINTELPRO, a butch rock hard, the 60K
But that is funny, right? Because clearly it's a knock on people within more progressive movements that are nevertheless less than helpful, or even, end up betraying movements or ultimately turning on people within the scene. And so it's like, hey, with friends like these, who even needs COINTELPRO? We don't even, the idea of some far-right governmental organization inserting an agent provocateur within our movement isn't even necessary, because apparently we have people who, are going to break it apart themselves, who are nominally like our allies and friends. I apologize. Luca is like, this whole time has been causing problems and I've been trying to ignore it, but give me one moment. Okay. She's like attacking my headphone cord, which makes it a bit distracting when you're trying to do a watch along. But let us proceed. So yeah, when I first heard Fuck the Border and a handful of other tunes like Super Bowl Patriot on Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes, I was like, damn, this new guy Todd, he's bringing a like more intense energy. Crazy. Not to say that there weren't fast or thrash type songs on the first couple albums, but yeah, not in the way or on the level of the Todd led songs vocally on their third album and beyond.
Oh, Hannah's lost its rocker again.
That line, the most pristine are hiding everything.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
What'd you think of Eden? What'd you think of the warm-up? Eden Harris. Comedic genius.
Eating Harris eating a shit sandwich. This mic just stinks after he used it.
This is called Mate Kamari Sukun Rasikan.
Thank you, Chris, because I did not remember how to pronounce it. But yes, this is one of my favorite songs from their first few albums. It's the opening track on Today's Empire's Tomorrow's Ashes, and it's a great tune which mixes narrative, history, and lessons to be extrapolated more broadly. And I apologize to keep pausing, but I will say when I saw them on tour for this album, again, I think like a year before this, they played this song, and among all of the newer songs, I remember it being especially well received by the audience, myself included. Like, it really hit.
Who will never walk a mile or mourn a murdered friend in this tiny woman's shoes. Drink up and mumble your reviews. I'm so humbled by it all. And around the same time, I was fighting with no hands. Windows and getting busy behind the sportsplex with the money's older sisters Italian. The Spino's Bella was flinching from the stick. A temple of very family planning, roll Pearl Harbor, and a Holocaust spanning 25 years to life. Contributor rolling paradise, and the shadows Santa Cruz. She crossed her fingers behind her back and put Suwano a Trojan horse and lay still to the motherfucker center north, where his rifle she emerged with a box under her arm. Her pledge of allegiance and her uniform. And she laid it at the gates of the general's embassy, and her whisper echoed in the dawn, and she disappeared. For Matthew Shepard.
If you didn't know, Matthew Shepard was a young gay man who was viciously beaten, essentially tortured for hours, and left to die, and he did in fact die. It was essentially a hate crime against a young gay man, and I forget, it took place in one of the more rural states of the US. I want to say it was like Wyoming or something like that, but basically he was like approached by some men at a bar who pretended like they were gay, and like they were trying to pick him up, but then they essentially abducted him, they beat him very badly, and he passed away. And I don't know if it was his family or like his family and other people, but there was an organization or like a fund, like the Matthew Shepard like organization, that was set up in the aftermath to help young teens and younger folk on the LGBTQ spectrum to, have allies and resources so that the world could be slightly less hostile and unwelcoming to them, and who have tried to, essentially change attitudes and, again, provide resources for those folks. And this song, Less Talk More Rock, written by the drummer Jord, who, I don't know how personal this is. There's certainly a personal anecdote in the song, but at the very least, I think he might be on that spectrum himself, and it's a positive affirmation of, it's a gay positive song, and a song that suggests that, even the punk scene, where people tend to be more progressive about issues and tend to be less conservative and hateful toward people that are different than themselves, there still can be a homophobia. And so the song is basically saying, like, look, if you like our music, if you like punk rock, then, and if you bought our albums, then, even if you have these latent homophobic tendencies, you've actually, your hand is down my pants by the transitive property. So the idea of calling out homophobia within the punk scene itself, never mind more broadly, is essentially the essence of this song. And I like that here they dedicate it to Matthew Shepard. That's pretty cool.
For Matthew Shepard. I'd like to actively encourage a toughest man that's hardly kept to this, my song, and bring your stupidest friends along. We wrote this song 'cause it's fucking boring to keep spelling out the words that you keep ignoring. And your macho shit won't faze me now. Just makes us laugh as your cash crunch jester take a bow. 'Cause did you know when I was 9, I tried to fuck a friend of mine? He was 8, then I turned 10. And 14 years later it happens again with another friend. This time me on the receiving end. All the piss in the world can't save you now. You dance to this, you drink to me. My sexuality, if your hands down my pants, my transitive property.
I like the logical phrasing there, and also the clever, like, cheekiness of the lyrics. So yeah, good song, good message, and clever use of logical thinking.
Our cities seem to function quite the same. So they don't after one things to be need to contain. So the upper middle class can sleep within themselves that trickle down. The sun is poverty. Murderers block our street. Weapons on their pen, that's policy. We got campaigns about the smalls of war. It's a lazy, shiftless population of the poor. This system cannot be reformed.
I think that was Rio de San Atlanta, Manitoba. Is that right? Yes, it is. Which, indicating that big cities and powerful forces tend to operate very similarly around the world. So whether you're in Rio, whether you're in Atlanta, whether you're in Manitoba, Canada, the murderers who walk our streets have pens and policies which are as destructive and life-shattering as, let's say, more localized violent crime and so on.
Don't
even if democracy broke loose, they'll just make the economy scream until we vote responsibly, which is obviously in scare quotes. Always a line or a pair of lines that stuck out to me. Give me one moment. I shall be right back. Okay. And for the record, that last song was A People's History of the World, which is essentially playing off of the title of one of my favorite books, or one of the books that really inspired me as much as any others, A People's History of the United States, 1492 to the Present, by the late Dr. Howard Zinn, who I was lucky enough to meet. He gave a talk, and in all places, or I guess that's the right phrasing, but yes, in all places, Newport Beach, which is a very affluent and I would say more conservative-minded Southern California city, certainly compared to other places in Southern California. And yeah, it was at a library, and it was, I'd say, a few years after this. I want to say like '04 maybe. So yeah, maybe only a year after this. I was thinking of after the concert that I saw. But yeah, ultimately I got him to sign my copy of A People's History of the United States, and I still have it to this very day. So I didn't want to go digging through my bookshelves right now to get it, just to put it in the little bubble over here on the side. But yes, that song, I believe, is essentially playing off of the title of that book, which again, it's a very bottom-up history, as it's called, which is, sort of a historical approach that goes back to at least E.P. Thompson, if not prior to that. But the idea of seeing the events and processes of world history not through the eyes of kings and statesmen, but through the eyes of working folks and people who are more often the oppressed rather than the oppressors. The State Lottery. This tune is so good. I apologize, but that line, with every racist pointed finger, I hear those goose steps getting closer, it's always stuck out to me. This is from their second album, Let's Talk More Rock, which I believe was 97. I feel like it's a line that just continues to get more and more relevant, and in 2025 it's hitting way too close to home.
Thanks. Yeah, who puked? Someone's sick. Is that what that smell is? Fuck, it's blowing right in my face with this fan here. All right, here's a new song.
together. The voice of Luke's father, Baron told that this is CNN. Recall, Eric kids slaughter reduced to send niggers and ragheads. And now I'm expected to learn. Dead Americans, the executioner's willing citizen. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to think it through. But when the chickens came all to roost and handle liver and handle liver, matching the alerts to the bully that never learns. I could have swore I heard a chorus rise and fall, wishing the soul meant more unhappy return. Every war waged only kings emerge unscathed.
That was Name and Address Withheld, a song that ended up, I believe, on the Potemkin City Limits album. Admittedly, it's not one that I've known as clearly and, that I internalize as much as some of the others from that album. But yes, I think at least there's some lines that reference 9/11, which happened in 2001, but I think after they had released the Today's Empire is Tomorrow's Ashes album. And, that line about when the chickens come home to roost and the executioner's willing citizens, I think are making reference to that.
We stood proud, waiting for the fight to begin. My eyes were the sun when we made swing or run. On the run, we're not starting for the night. We can run, we will want to hear one fight. Get the caskets ready, we're gonna tear right through this scene. Yeah, go! One, two, three, go! In the dead, golden Hollywood mine. What woman I can't win. Things to try to hide. Never leave anyone behind. Arms are turned fast in the thing. But one last chance to leave this place. Pass it up and move it on. Got a war in the head. Got a lot of content with me. Let her pump it. I'll jump ahead. You feel it in the air. Living close beyond oblivion. From the dead. Walk head to head. But more you won't pull the definite. Doesn't powers do the same. Freedom comes away. I never happened. I didn't know we owned the world. Come in.
I'm excited. They're about to play Ladies' Night in Loserville, which a song title I think gives you a sense of what it may be about in advance. But yeah, that was March of the Crabs. Another one, this one, that was from Today's Empire is Tomorrow's Ashes, though again, another one that I enjoy, but I never internalize as much as some of the other tunes from that album.
Talk some shit.
Hey, is LaPlante
I
here?
run out, I'm done, man.
Does anybody smell LaPlante in the building? He's
Did you
That's
hear?
what I thought the puke smell was.
There's Jeff LaPlante in the building.
So everybody feeling it today?
I absolutely love that one. Music and message. Like, there's just so many good lines in that.
So, this guy wants to know what's going on in the room. What's going on in the room? What's that?
The world is going down fucking hill. That's what's going on in the fucking world.
No kidding. Hey.
Not till 2100. That's when the Earth's temperature rises 6 degrees and methane hydrogen is
anybody
released
see
at an
on
enormous
the
rate
news?
and global
We're well on our way, Chris, unfortunately.
warming effects, and we experience a second extinction.
Anybody's here? There's Tom BMX coming to Jiu-Jitsu soon. Hey, so anybody see on the news? BBC News. One of the guys who wanted the war so bad in Iraq just slit his wrists out of guilt. That happened last night. Killed himself out of guilt over the Iraq war because they know they made everything up. So in the Congo, this guy who was Mobutu's cabinet minister, the only one with honor, also slit his wrists.
I like to party fucking hard. But rock and roll the same.
Woof. Back to the Motor League. Not only did they play the song when I saw them in 01 or 02, but they played it in the Victory Lap tour many years later in 2017, and it's one of my favorites in their catalog because it speaks to the idea that, like, you know, they're very into politics, they have very prominent ideas, but they also love to listen to music, and they don't like that even in genres where it should be more about ideas and attitudes and creative expression, there's an intense drive to corporatize and to sanitize bands, and thus you get groups which, you know, on the surface of it, oh, they're rebels, they look cool or whatever, but, you know, in the end it ends up being about, you know, selling t-shirts and, you know, doing commercial spots for big corporations and so on. So the idea of staying true to being hardcore, like in their personal lives and also in their music, I think is well represented in this song.
This guy who was Mobutu's cabinet minister, the only one with honor, also slit his wrists.
I like to party fucking hard. I like to rock and roll the same. Leave a fuck till I burn out. Don't give a fuck if I fade away. Back to the murder lane with me. Before a monster things around, or rather by problem, or leave them curiously through. Torture out his colors, but for punching at your power. Back to the morning I go. Inside you were lucky and turned out to be a live grenade. Oh my god. Holy shit. Run! Reenacting that who kissing mommy's little skinheads. Death like a single bench of wieners from the straight edge. Fuck off! Who cares? I'd rather have a triptych than listen to your bullshit. Fuck off! Who cares? Not just doing things, just shitty things. The stomach you feel left to burn never ceases to amaze. And as I'm suffering of perfection, it reminds me of my own race. With just my own history. Oh! Mouth feet, eating hats, tinted bowl. Amish phone books, drunk and roll.
I do love those lines though, because it's, you know, not just about the like hyper masculine like new metal of the late 90s, early 2000s and so on, but also that even within the punk scene there's, you know, ultra purists who like, you know, if you didn't say this or if you have this attitude. It reminds me of the Dead Kennedy song Where Do You Draw the Line, where it's about like, yeah, okay, we're all in this to, you know, express ourselves and so on, but if we start like getting to the point where, you know, just enjoying loud music and, you know, embracing new ideas and so on is like we're essentially attacking each other and so on. So I love that line, like, as I'm suffering your perfection. It just speaks to the multiple targets, I think, of this song, where it's like, yeah, we like to rock hard, we have ideas and so on, but number one, don't corporatize that to a point where it becomes like an ironic joke, and number two, also don't get so hyper purist that you almost turn it into another religion.
Stinky fists.
What have we here? 15 years later, it's the rings of swelling, changing informists. Fist in the air.
Holy shit, I forgot. There's like that line is a reference to another Dead Kennedy song, Chicken Shit Conformist, like your parents. Like the idea that people start out, you know, listening to underground music and, you know, fast and crazy music compared to what their parents listened to and rejecting the sort of safe conservatism of the previous generation. And then before long, they end up listening to Triumph of the Swill. Again, another Dead Kennedy song about the way that punk and, or well, not just punk, but like, again, underground forms of music often or eventually get co-opted by larger labels and corporate forces, and they get neutered or sanitized to the point where they're marketable and they're not as dissident or revolutionary as they may have started. So I love the way they combine the names of two Dead Kennedy songs there.
Here, 15 years later, it's the rings of swelling, changing informists. Fist in the air. My father likes our rebels, put on cornettos and biscuits. Lord, hear our prayer. Take back your immigrant march crews, your power of politics. Blow dry my hair. Stick me on a 10 speed. Back to the motor lead. Back to the motor lead. Back to the motor. Life is such a popularity. Kindness is just a good. People fall for fear for you. Come on, please. That's a candy corn and drug giver. Solution for their kill. Silence and computers. Rounding up the shady edges.
Fuck Warped Tour.
I'm with you, Chris. I will say I did once go to the Warped Tour, not because I bought tickets myself, but one of my friends had a booth there, and he had like passes, and he gave them out to a few of his friends. So I forget who I saw there, but yeah, it was more like I was an adjunct to someone who was like involved with a booth there. But I get the idea that like punk bands playing in a concert series that's put on by corporations which have spotty records in terms of their impact and the way they treat their employees and their environmental practices and so on, there's a bit of a hypocritical irony to that. So again, that's a longer conversation, and on some level I can see different sides of it, because if bands like Bad Religion are playing where like I think they genuinely have good, and not only good but dissident messages, if that brings them to a larger audience, I think there's something to be said for that. But again, if it's under the auspices of corporations who have dubious practices, then there's still like a question of like, where do you draw the line, to again go back to Jello and the Kennedys.
What? If anyone in the world's ever reminded me of Mike Rack, it's him. So. What? What song, Harold? Every time I go over there, this guy spanks me or something, so I can't look at my set list anymore. Woo, Mike Rack. That is the sexiest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Jesus.
Woo! Do it again, one more time.
Fuck the Rough Riders, the Bombers
I got people touching my
rule,
leg.
buddy.
I got.
Are you talking the Saskatchewan Rough Riders or the Ottawa Rough Riders?
The CFL is the only fucking sports industry that hasn't been played out with money yet.
Which one?
Sounds like fun. I had season tickets to the Saskatchewan Rough Riders when I was a kid, over in the Rider rookie section.
Is it
Me
CFL?
and my friend
That's not
Beak,
true.
we'd sit there and just wish we were out doing something besides
Butcher, I
being
thought
at a
I told
Rough
you to
Rider
take
game
these
all
down.
summer. It's a good way for parents to pawn off their little headbanger kids for a Sunday, every Sunday for about 10 hours. What song there, Harold? I forgot it was even here, actually.
So, yes, and we thought nation states were a bad idea. One of their true calling cards, and my favorite song from their second album, Let's Talk More Rock, and which features one of the greatest opening verses. I don't even know if it's technically a verse. It's like an intro stanza, but yeah, one of the greatest openings ever.
Publicly subsidized, privately profitable. The anthem of the up at your pop, but you're untouchable. Focus a moment, not in approval. Bury our heads in the barcodes of these neo-colonials. Nemesis, the romance of the nation state. A place of wisdom for human power concentrate. Try again, but now what you feel is what is class war. This is class war, yes, this is class war. Just a kid, can't believe I got away with this kind of shit. What a stupid boy. And it's beautiful. No regard for principle. What a stupid boy. Environment disposed where that job left. Everybody knows who can tell by the smile of the CEOs. Environmental restraints about to go. We can bet, possibly said. To ensure the benefit of unrestricted labor laws kept in place by displaced government death squads.
That line, unrestricted labor laws kept in place by displaced government death squads, like so many historical references and unfortunate realities of human history and / the present.
Possibly said. To ensure the benefit of unrestricted labor laws fucking believe. What a stupid world. Fuck this bullshit display of class loyalty. Me and the leaders wrapped up in a flag shit revelry.
Holy shit, hey, there's Hopper getting a present.
Yes, yes.
So,
This gentleman here has been touching my leg all night, and I think he'd like to say something.
hey, I saw you out
Spy
washing
your
windows.
squeegee kids.
I seen you out there today.
Joking, man. Smells good.
Hey, what was I gonna say here? Oh yeah, this one's for Dave Green. Let's have a chant of give Barney a raise, just for fun here. Give Barney a raise. Give Barney a raise. Give Barney a raise. Give Barney a raise. Come on, that's the sound man.
Would
here.
that be barn raising?
That would be.
I got that off Eaton.
Did you really? Okay, one more time here. Give Barney a raise. Give Barney a raise. Give Barney a raise. Give Barney a raise.
Back into the
Give
vaults here,
Barney
Kowalski.
a
Hey, we got
raise.
$1.
Give Barney a
$2.
raise. No one cares
$2.
about Barney. Okay, that's fine. Fine with me. Fine.
This is a song from the era of silent sequels.
That one apparently is called Mutual Friend. I gotta be honest, I don't even remember that one. He said the era, like the silence era, but yeah, that must be from like either the early stuff or maybe it was a non-album tune. But yeah, I don't even really recall that one. A standout tune from their opening album, How to Clean Everything, stick the goddamn flag up your ass, or what's the actual phrasing? It just says stick the flag up your ass, but yes, definitely a song that is critical of nationalism more broadly and hyper-nationalism masked as patriotism in particular.
All ideology, but not the obvious thing you miss. Pushing the intentions of the boy Scouts chanting war. Well, that's a sound of freedom, son, he said. Free to say no more. But wait a minute, Dad. Did you actually say freedom? Well, if you're dumb enough to vote, you're fucking dumb enough to believe him. And if this country is so goddamn free, then I can burn your fucking flag where I damn well please. I carried down that book, convinced he was mine. By this unreason, conjecture kept me in line. Then I
Jeff LaPlante, please report to the stage. Jeff LaPlante to the stage.
Did Spider-Man or Sum 41 swing down during this last song here?
That's what I think of Molson Canadian.
That's what I think of Molson
Tear down their vote.
Canadian. This is what Ken Kowalski thinks of Molson Canadian.
Come on, come on.
Take a willing wheel, special partner for me who is like a change the beat. I'm up to your concern. Ask for the look at and how it's out of grace. Now the Spanish when I come back and headaches. The nail that sticks up. Gets hammered down. The masters, finest. His finest tools about slack jaw, flashing. A mixed cacophony of screaming billboards. Disney fight history. Sometimes the ties that bind us strange. No justice shines upon the cemetery plots marked Henry Weevil or Adam Baker. Bedroom heroes. The personal daughters have cast their shadows. Permanent faces built into these borders. Under cover of the customary gap we find between history and true founding fathers. Listen to rockets blinding red glare. Bombs bursting in air. One nation is invisible. The truth is the package learned of ratification. The people that are coffin painted black. Solemnly born in funeral procession, buried deep in the earth. Emblem of the Dixon mission, enduring all their public liberty. And someday, somewhere, today's empires, tomorrow's ashes.
Absolutely killer tune, the title track of their third album, Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes. Love that one.
And one more final momentous pull for the last days of Ron Kowalski's drinking career.
Super Bowl Patriot. Again, as I said, with Todd joining the group and with this album, Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes, it was like, damn, like, you know, Propagandhi still sounds like the Propagandhi I know, but they've definitely added a harder edge to some of their songs with this new guy.
All right. Fuck. We got one more here. If LaPlante's not in the house, we just got one more.
It's pretty hot in here, eh, peoples? Mike McKenzie has something to say.
Hey, I noticed a lot of people are wearing shirts with quote from Orwell on them. I just wanted to point out that this is the centennial of Orwell's birth. He was born in 1903. And Orwell dedicated his life. He dedicated his life to denouncing dictatorship. He denounced the right every chance he got. But the other thing that Orwell did that I think is worth pointing out is he devoted his life to pointing out the absurdity of the left when the left was absurd. And Orwell is worth respecting for that reason.
In that case, I would like to point out that I am absurd.
We're not the left, by the way.
It's true though, like Orwell, denounced far-right totalitarian governments, but, books like Animal Farm were a shot at the supposed far left. I mean, in many ways, like the Soviet Union was not really what we might call like left, if the left means progressive and liberal. It was very authoritarian and totalitarian, but like economically, like centralized planning and so on. It was what is often called the left. But yes, Animal Farm and one or two other books of his take shots at far left totalitarian dictatorship. So he basically critiqued authoritarian governments no matter how they identified. So yeah, again, I'm with that guy. Like, shout out to Orwell.
If anyone could take me to a barber who's not myself, would be a little less absurd.
Thank you for coming and supporting the International Solidarity Movement and the Grassy Narrows blockade. Thanks.
It's a reference to, like, I think an indigenous rights movement in Canada at the time that was basically trying to prevent, like, I think like logging and or, like timber companies, basically the exploitation of indigenous lands and resources, where again the benefits of that were not going to go to local communities. And I think they instituted a blockade so that they were preventing, some of this development, quote unquote, to take place. I don't know the details of it, but I do think, if I'm remembering correctly, okay, yeah, so one of the bonus features on this disc, As Long as the Rivers Flow, it's like a documentary about the story of the Grassy Narrows blockade, which is from 2003, is that documentary. So I'm not going to watch it in this watch-along, but maybe at some point. But yeah, that's what he's making reference to there. In fact, give me one moment. I shall be right back, and we'll finish this. Okay. Let us commence and conclude. Excuse me.
It's a Rogue Nation. Thanks to Wife, and thanks to Burn the 8-Track for doing the same. This is called Purina Hall of Fame. Thanks for coming.
First, one more little thing to say here. If that's okay, Chris, little buddy.
What else is new?
Derek Kuhn there from Burn the 8-Track. First guy I ever knew in Winnipeg here. I'd like to say when I was here, come to Winnipeg, ugly young man, sitting there alone every day, nobody. Derek Kuhn comes to my house with a piece of pizza for me. And I was like, this guy is a swell mother. So forever I shall remain grateful to him for being nice to me in my loneliest of hours. And I was gonna write a song about it like Dave Mustaine from Megadeth did. Or instead of writing a song, I didn't talk about it.
I feel the same way about all the ladies in there.
So instead I'll just tell you that little poem there and oh yes. What's that about Dave Mustaine? Oh yeah, he sucks shit. And now,
what
song?
Excuse me? Squeeze me?
Okay, he sucks shit for 20 years.
Thanks for coming. Shut up, fuckface!
You guys want to talk for a little bit, or do you want to play a song? You ready?
Yeah, I want to tell a little story about George trying to...
lives have been, I forget the first couple parts, but, lost on the gallows and have ever been enshrined in palaces. Again, it's a concept and a phrasing that sticks with you. Luca is going to be crazy again. I apologize. We'll see if we can get through this without me having to pause once more.
Thanks.
Where's Hopper? Hopper, get up here! Instead, right now we'll play Dayglow Abortion's song.
Hey,
here.
everybody remember Hopper? Hey, what's with the clothes? Nobody accepts you with clothes on here, Hopper.
Just fucking do it.
Take the fucking clothes off.
I lost a bet.
Take them off.
Bet.
Take off the clothes. Take off the clothes. Yes, he's sucking that in.
Is that enough?
No! Panty. Hopper's the panty model for
Don't be a LeBron.
your wife. Apparently have some pretty nice panties for sale.
There we go! I just found another dollar. Hopper, that's not good enough. Get over here. Look at that.
It's a song for our southern neighbors.
Here's a trip
Let's
down
do this
memory
fucking
lane.
stupid song.
The album that got me into punk rock.
Wake up, America! Be a good American! Buy American! But your next gonna be American! Oh, what a bunch of shit! Nazi propaganda!
True. This is one of the songs from their Quantity is Job Number One, like, you know, unreleased or like bonus material compilation. I think it's a cover of a band, or from a band called Concrete Blondes, if I'm recalling that correctly.
Thanks.
Sorry, Jordy.
Cheers! Time for beers and fucking huge
Broken
doobies
drums.
outside or on the stage.
We've got less than 20 seconds here. That was a tune called Hard Times, which I don't know where that comes from. Maybe that's a cover, maybe that's from one of Todd's previous bands, but yeah, I'm not familiar with that one at all. So Glenn Lambert was an alias that Chris used for a few years. It actually got to the point where there were people who thought like Chris had really left the band and Glenn Lambert was like their new singer, but it was all just sort of a prank, like a hoax, and Glenn Lambert never really existed. It was just an alias of Chris's. I'll just leave that on the screen for a moment. Okay, so So yeah, I was wondering because that guy Scott, I don't know if he was like in that band or if he just like sung that song, but that wasn't a Propagandhi song either. Oh, and then Cro-Mag, so that was a cover. And then I guess this last track is this tune in the credits is by them. I'm not even gonna say that name out loud, but yeah, I think this is the songwriter for Concrete Blondes, I think. Well, there you go, folks. As wild and insane as the concerts on the More Quantity is Job #1 compilation, again, when I saw them, they were a little more businesslike, but still, you know, it was just as a hardcore of a show. They just didn't talk quite as much between the songs. In any case, let me know what you think of this. It's #1, a flash from the past, meaning more than 20 years have passed, and they put out multiple albums since this, but it's also a presaging of the future, because again, they're about to put out a new album, which I'm very much looking forward to. So let me know what you think, and I will see you next time. Peace.